Shorekeeper is finally coming back in Wuthering Waves 2.6, but after so much time has passed, is she still worth pulling for? That's what I'm going to be talking about in today's video, by discussing Shorekeeper's biggest pros and cons. The absolute best thing I have to say about Shorekeeper, that everyone can probably agree with, is the fact that she's used in a ridiculous amount of teams. And when I say ridiculous, I mean almost every single team in the entire game has Shorekeeper as their best in-slot third character. And for the teams where she is not best in slot, you can bet your ass she's in top 3, because this character is ridiculous. Name any DPS, and Shorekeeper will find their way into their teams. Jian, Shorekeeper. Jinshi, Shorekeeper. Shengliao, Shorekeeper. Camellia uses Shorekeeper. Carlotta uses Shorekeeper. Phoebe can use Shorekeeper as one of her best teammates. Zani can use Shorekeeper as one of the best teammates. Frolova is completely fine with using Shorekeeper as well, and it looks like Augusta is about to be yet another Shorekeeper user. Usually when I say that a character has a bunch of teams, this would be like 3, maybe 4 teams, and that's really the height of it. But with Shorekeeper, it's more of a challenge to find a character where she isn't used in the team. Sure, there's a couple of characters where Shorekeeper is not the best in slot, but the amount of teams where she is the best in slot more than makes up for this. And the reason for this is that almost all of Shorekeeper's buffs are universal, which is the next point. Shorekeeper has a bunch of buffs within her kit, primarily being her 12.5% crit rate, 25% crit damage, and 15% damage amplification. These are just the buffs within her own kit, because she also has the Rejuvenating Glow set, as well as the Fallacy of No Return, meaning you get an additional 25% attack. So in total, 25% attack, 15% damage amplification, and 50% crit value. This kind of buffing can be used by almost every single character in the entire game. Every single DPS we have right now scales off of crit, and every single DPS we have right now is capable of benefiting from damage amplification. And guess what? The other thing that Shorekeeper gives, which is attack, is something that is only not valued by a single character, which is Kartathea. All of this means that every single one of the buffs in Shorekeeper's own kit is used for every single DPS in the entire game. And this is why Shorekeeper is so universal and used in so many teams, because all of her buffs just apply to every single team in the game. And when it comes to the attack from Rejuvenating Glow, while we do have a DPS that is incapable of using this, Kartathea is in the minority. We are very much still getting attack scaling DPSs, and they are going to continue to be the majority, which means that 90% of DPS characters will be capable of using the Shorekeeper's entire kit. So I really do not see a universe in which this character is going to fall off anytime soon. And that brings us to the next point, which is the fact that Shorekeeper has a bunch of very useful defensive utility. The first thing to mention is the fact that after using her outro skill, you're capable of recovering from hits up to 5 times, and you're gonna be able to treat it as if you perfectly dodged the attack. Perfect dodges have a bunch of utility within wuwa's gameplay. Obviously, the number one thing would be that they help you avoid damage, which Shorekeeper sadly doesn't really do. But perfect dodges have a bunch of other utilities to them. For example, access to dodge counters. While there are characters that don't really care about their dodge counters, like for example Carlotta and especially someone like Calcharo, there are plenty of characters who really get a lot of benefit out of their dodge counter. Namely, characters like Kartathea or Phoebe, who are able to use their dodge counter to get into later parts of their attack string, which allows them to greatly speed up their rotation. Especially Phoebe has a lot of benefit from this. Additionally, perfect dodges will grant you with extra concerto energy, meaning that even if you're playing a sub DPS, using a perfect dodge will still be able to speed up your rotation and make your character even smoother to play. With Shorekeeper in the team, you don't need to worry about dodging perfectly, because even if you mess up the timing, she's here to save you. Being able to cancel your knockback into a perfect dodge is also very useful because, well, the knockback from getting hit lasts quite a good amount of time. If you had to deal with that animation every single time you got hit, you would be losing a lot of time on your rotations, and also a lot of damage if you're using a character like GN who has time limits on their damage window. So not only does the free access to perfect dodges give you the ability to play while paying less attention, it's also capable of simply making you do more damage if you do end up getting hit. Another piece of very useful utility for a very niche amount of game modes would be the fact that the Shorekeeper is capable of reviving your character. Revives are something that I usually don't really put much weight on, but considering that wuwa has a game mode that just kinda kills you for existing, I am willing to put a little more faith on the fact that Shorekeeper is capable of reviving characters. This game mode obviously being the tactical holograms. Holograms are incredibly hard fights for a lot of people, because they just kind of one-shot you a lot of the time, and a lot of people can think this is unfair. You're being punished simply for letting your guard down even a single time. But Shorekeeper gives you a little bit of leeway, because she has a revive within her kit that's capable of triggering once every, I think 15 minutes, I don't remember to be honest. But the point still stands. The fact that she's able to revive your characters is a very useful utility for people who are either not super good at the game, or people playing on lower end devices and just simply aren't able to have as good of gameplay as they normally would. Another thing that is very good for Shorekeeper is that she has an incredibly short rotation. This is the standard for someone of her role being a healer, but, well, not every character has this benefit. For example, Yohu and Baisha don't really have that short of a rotation for their role. However, Shorekeeper and Verena do have a very short rotation, which is very useful when it comes to making your team deal more DPS. Sure, having a short rotation doesn't make your damage per rotation any higher, but it's still very useful when it comes to clearing endgame modes like Tower or Whimpering Wastes, because the less time you're using on Shorekeeper, the less you have to wait until you swap into a character that's actually able of doing more damage. For example, someone like a Shakona or a Brant or a Zhezha. So having a short rotation as a support is very useful, because honestly, supports don't really do any damage, let's be real here. And another very big positive for Shorekeeper is the fact that even if you already have her, Shorekeeper has some of the best vertical investment in the entire game. Now what I mean with vertical investment is investing further into a character after you've already gotten them, by which I primarily mean their sequences and their signature weapon. Shorekeeper's signature weapon is capable of giving the entire team an extra 14% attack. This doesn't sound that major, but it's more than an entire substat, so it honestly is pretty nice, although I wouldn't exactly say it's anything groundbreaking. But what I'm really talking about is Shorekeeper's sequences, particularly her second and her third sequence. The first one is a pretty good amount of quality of life, making the range of her stellar realm bigger, as well as making it last longer. This is very nice for characters that have very long rotations, like Jinshi or Camellia, so that means you don't really have a time limit on how long your rotation has to be, as long as it doesn't cross the 40-second mark. But if your rotation is 40 seconds, I'm very concerned about your gameplay. But that brings me to the second sequence. It doesn't sound all that interesting at first glance, just 40% more attack to your teammates. But 40% attack is more than an entire main set on a free cost. It's incredibly hard for me to really describe just how powerful a 40% attack buff is on all of your characters at all times. I really just cannot put into words how good this is. This is going to be a very large damage increase for almost every single one of your teams. And because I talked earlier about just how universal the Shorekeeper is, making her even stronger in every single one of these teams is just kind of a ridiculous damage increase when it comes to your entire account. I would say that S2 Shorekeeper is one of the best investments you could ever make in the entire game. And that's not even where it ends, because Shorekeeper's third sequence makes her rotation infinitely less long. I already talked about how short Shorekeeper's rotation is, but you can make it even shorter simply by getting the third sequence. Shorekeeper sequences simply double down on what's already incredibly strong about this character, and makes it somehow even better. So I guess it's time to talk about the only real negative that Shorekeeper has, which is that as of late, she has been losing some teams. For example, in the Zani team, you can simply use Spectra Rover to get basically the exact same result as using the Shorekeeper. And then there's Frey teams where she's just undoubtedly not the best in slot anymore. She was replaced by Arrow Rover within the Cardathea team, Lupa within the Monofusion team, and then finally Frolova teams, which are more focused on running free DPS characters. But honestly, I can hardly call this a con, because while she is not best in slot for these teams, she is still incredibly good with Frolova, she's still incredibly good with Zani, and even for Cardathea and the Monofusion team, she is still a very good option, and most likely going to be in your top 3 when it comes to alternative characters. But that's just my opinion. What do you think of the Shorekeeper? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Additionally, if you have any questions, be sure to join my Discord, which is linked in the description. Additionally, if you just want to see more of me as a person, check out my second channel, which is also linked in the description. I primarily talk about punishing Grey Raven, but I kinda just make videos about whatever I feel like. But that'll be all from me. Peace.